Okay, so let me introduce you to my colleagues and our guests for this conversation. I want to introduce first Sudhir Chaudhary. He's with us in the studio. Sudhir and my colleagues, you just saw them in action in that interview with the Prime Minister. We'll try and go beyond what was said and understand why this was said. Also with us at this time is Anjana Kashyap. She's joining us. She's been out on the campaign trail with Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal. So she's joining us from the field, as is Shweta Singh. Shweta was with the Union Minister Smriti Irani through the day in Amethi, so she's got a sense of what's happening in Amethi. I want to show you first some excerpts, very quick excerpts, and then we'll ask our editors and journalists and also guests who've been looking at this interview very carefully to try and tell us what was the highlight and what they picked up beyond what you've heard on TV.
इस चुनाव के दौरान और उससे पहले भी विपक्षी पार्टियां ये आरोप लगाती हैं कि लोकतंत्र हिंदुस्तान में खतरे में है। वो कहती हैं कि जो डेमोक्रेटिक इंस्टीट्यूशंस हैं वो पहले से कमजोर हो गई हैं। यहां तक कि आप पर तानाशाही, डिक्टेटर होने का भी आरोप लगता है। इसको आप कैसे देखते हैं कि मतलब ये कहा जाता है कि लोग आपसे बहुत डरते हैं, खौफ में।
उन इंस्टीट्यूशंस का नाम बताइए जिसके बाद पता चले।
नहीं, जैसे उनको लगता है कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट शायद कमजोर हो रहा है, या फिर लेजिस्लेचर में जिस तरह की बहस होनी चाहिए पहले होती भी थी, वो फटाफट बिल पास हो जाते हैं, इतने कमिटीज में नहीं जाते। इस तरह उनको लग रहा है कि डेमोक्रेटिक बैकस्लाइडिंग हो रही है। इसको आप कैसे देखते हैं? बिकॉज
पहली बात ये है कि पार्लियामेंट के अंदर डिबेट करने के लिए बार बार हम कह रहे हैं आइए, लेकिन इनको लगता है कि हमारे पास कहने को कुछ है नहीं, कहने वाले भी लोग नहीं हैं। इनके जितने नए एमपी आए हैं ना, वो आके मुझे कहता है कि साहब हमारे तो 5 साल बर्बाद हो गए, हम एक शब्द बोल नहीं पाए हाउस में। मैं ऑपोजिशन की बात कर रहा हूं। मैंने कभी उनके नेताओं को कहा, मैंने कहा आपको करना ऐसा करो, 1 घंटा आपके यंग जो फर्स्ट टाइम एमपी है उनको मौका दो, फिर डिस्टर्ब करो, बाद में करो डिस्टर्ब। इनको जीवन में ये सब मैं कह चुका हूं इनको। मेरी कोशिश रही है कि ये लोग कुछ करें, लेकिन दुर्भाग्य है कि कांग्रेस का ये परिवार, उनके लिए लोकतंत्र मतलब उनका सत्ता में होना। वे आज भी ये स्वीकार करने को तैयार नहीं है कि 2014 से इस देश में कोई दूसरी सरकार देश के लिए चुनी है, कि कोई दूसरा प्रधानमंत्री है जो देश ने बनाया है, मन से स्वीकार नहीं कर पा रहे हैं। और इसलिए वो हर जगह पे उनके मैनिफेस्टो के मुद्दे अगर आप इंप्लीमेंट कर रहे हैं तो भी उनको बुरा लग रहा है। उनकी कही हुई बातें आज अगर आप इंप्लीमेंट कर रहे हैं, उनको तो खुशी होनी चाहिए, भाई ये तो हम कहते थे आप कर रहे हैं।
The India Today group interview with Prime Minister Narendra Modi trending #1 across social media. I want to start with my colleague Sudhir Chaudhary. Sudhir, what stood out for you as being the highlight of the interview? You had many opportunities going back to the time when he was CM and even before. How do you see this evolution? What stood out for you in the interview?
Thank you, Rahul, and good evening to your viewers. So I would say that it was not just a normal Chunav Prachar interview, which he has been giving to so many people and so many channels. I would say that it's a landmark interview. This particular interview had depth. It was not just question and answer. There was a conversation, and it was a very good, purposeful conversation. That means this interview had a direction, it had a purpose, and it had an outcome. So it was a complete 360-degree interview, which makes it very, very different from other interviews, which we have been witnessing and watching. And the thing which came out was not just a desperate neta who just wants to win elections or who just wants to get more and more votes. He comes out as a very visionary leader who's thinking about the country, not just winning the elections. And he says that, while implementing all his policies, votes are a byproduct. So I would say that, while sitting there when you were asking questions and we were all together, it was a completely very different and enriching experience. And both sides were eager to know each other. Both sides were, I would say, that equally balanced. And we asked every possible question which should have been asked to him.
Yeah, absolutely. What stood out for me most was just how relaxed the Prime Minister was, because there were many moments when there were very tricky questions posed to him by all our editors. And Anjana, your key highlights, because the Prime Minister, you had some very complicated questions on communalization, his governance being secular, but campaigning being perceived as being communal. He just stood there. He didn't get flustered at anything that came his way and actually took the effort to try and explain things from his point of view.
Absolutely, Rahul. And Rahul, what was most interesting was when I finished my question on kya chunav mein aap Hindu-Muslim kar rahe hain, the first line that he said was that I'm very happy you asked me this question. It's a good question. And from there, he put forth his point. And going back to your previous question, I think this interview will add to the entire Modi legacy for a lifetime, Rahul. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was facing some questions that he has faced all his life. But he has never been, has never probably taken those questions or never answered them. But this interview ensured that he was facing all those questions, and willingly so. When we asked him this question on is communal politics, this entire thing about secular administration but communal campaigning, he came forth with some very, very solid arguments that he had. He began by saying that I have just exposed the communal agenda of my opponents who are saying that they are going to do Muslim appeasement. And he said that the Congress manifesto talks about giving the contracts in coming times to Muslims. You people don't talk about that. All that has been hidden behind the fact that I am talking about minorities. If I have to talk about minorities, if it comes to minority appeasement, if I have to say the word Musalman if it comes to minority appeasement, I will do so, and I will ensure that my opponents are exposed. So he put forth everything with solid arguments, and it was actually very difficult to catch him off guard, because you also faced many such questions when you were asking, he was questioning you back, and that classic Kaun Rahul has become quite legendary. Rahul Kaun has become quite legendary now. So yeah, Rahul, I think it was
he had some bouncers coming his way, and he did try and hit them back, and it was very conversational. I think the point that Anjana makes is very important. The fact that it's very conversational. It's not as if you bowled a ball, he's just waiting for him to deliver his answer. There's an actual conversation going on, which makes it that much more interesting, hopefully, for everyone who watched. And what stood out was, Shweta, when he says that of all the things that have happened in this campaign, the change in Naya Kashmir is what endears him. The fact that no matter who they vote for, the fact that almost 40% of the voters in Srinagar, the highest in decades, came out to vote, he said that that is the kind of thing, the kind of change that gives him the greatest joy and satisfaction.
And it was kind of heartwarming when he actually expressed his displeasure. Why didn't you start with this? He said, I had been expecting this question, but yes, this is my biggest achievement as a Prime Minister. And all of us know that, Rahul, because since 2014, Kashmir was at the top of his agenda. Even when he tried to go to Pakistan, there were a lot of critics. There were a lot of people who questioned his foreign policy. There were a lot of people who questioned his Kashmir policy and still do. And he knows that. He's aware of that. And he says that everything apart, what I am happy about is that people in Kashmir came out in such large numbers. And exactly, I would like to reiterate what Anjana just said, that whenever we asked a hard question, he was actually happy about it. Whether it's about the communal angle of the entire campaigning process, whether it's about ED, whether it's about the press conferences not being organized that you asked, or when I asked him about the Election Commission taking 11 days to release data for the first phase of the elections. So I think very candid, very conversational, not at all trying to overpower the interviewer, answering everything that was being hurled to him as a question. So he was happy about it all. He was happy to explain. He was happy to put his point of view across. And I think he was very clear. Rahul, I was in Amethi in the daytime, and now I'm in Pratapgarh. And the feedback on the ground earlier with the snippets, and now after the full interview has been telecast, everybody has been appreciative of the kind of questions that the India Today group and all the four of us put to him. Rahul.
Well, Shweta, Anjana and Sudhir have all had long days. They're traveling. They still need to make their way back to where they'll be sleeping. So I won't hold them back any longer. Thank you very much for joining us. And we don't want to compliment ourselves, really. That's for viewers to decide whether what they thought of the questions, what they thought of the answers, what they thought of the experience, and most importantly...
Rahul, I'll just add one more thing. When you interview somebody like Narendra Modi, how is it different from other leaders in the country? His solid experience of 52 years on ground, from the lowest level of politics, where he was just a pracharak and then karyakarta, then office bearer, and then chief minister, and then prime minister. That experience of 52 years, that speaks. And the kind of stories he told us while,
on camera and off camera.
Off camera, on camera.
We were getting worried that there's a big sabha in Maharashtra that's waiting for you. Absolutely. He was so calm and wanted to talk.
Look at those small stories, and that is itself, they are like a book in itself, where he's talking about the villagers, the women in the village panchayat, or the school kids, and how he picks the feedback from them, and then he implements it on the national level. So that's a very unique thing which we need to learn.
You stay with us. So we also asked the Prime Minister about why he's been talking about Mangal Sutra, infiltrators, people who have more children, Hindu, Muslim, that the perception is that he seems to be attacking minorities, and that's the charge that the opposition levels at him. Here's what the Prime Minister said.
पक्ष का कहना है कि आप जो चुनावी कैंपेन करते हैं उसमें आप हिंदू मुस्लिम।
ये बहुत ही अच्छा सवाल पूछा आपने। मैं ठीक से बताना चाहता हूँ दर्शकों को, होता क्या है जी, आपने पूरी तरह सांप्रदायिक एजेंडा पर चले और मैंने उसको एक्सपोज किया, मैंने उसकी धज्जियां उड़ाई, मैंने उस पर आरोप लगाए, तो जो मूल बात थी उसको उनकी इकोसिस्टम हटा देती है। और आप लोग भी उस इकोसिस्टम के इतने प्रेशर में जीते हैं, आप भी फिर उसको हाथ नहीं लगाते हैं, फिर आप मेरी बात को लेकर के चलाते हैं, तो आपको लगता है मैं मुसलमान बोला। बात ये नहीं है जी, मुद्दा ये है कि उन्होंने अपने मैनिफेस्टो में लिखा है कि अब वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट सिस्टम में भी माइनॉरिटी को लाएंगे, ठेका माइनॉरिटी को दिया जाएगा। अगर मैं उस ठेके का विरोध करते हुए पद्धति का विरोध करता हूं, वो मैं सेकुलरिज्म कर रहा हूं। लेकिन चूंकि मुझे उसमें माइनॉरिटी शब्द बोलना पड़ता है, चूंकि मुझे उसमें मुसलमान शब्द बोलना पड़ता है, चूंकि मुझे उसमें अल्पसंख्यक बोलना पड़ता है, तो आप मीनिंग निकालते हैं कि मैं कुछ हमला उन पर कर रहा हूं। मैं उन पर हमला नहीं कर रहा हूं, मैं उन पर कर रहा हूं जो पॉलिटिकल पार्टियां हैं, जो भारत के सेकुलरिज्म की धज्जियां उड़ा रही है, जो अपीजमेंट का पॉलिटिक्स कर रही है, देश के संविधान की भावनाओं को नष्ट कर रही है। और मेरे पास सबूत है कि मैं नहीं करता हूं। क्यों? मैं कहता हूं 100% सैचुरेशन। अगर मान लीजिए एक गांव में 700 लोग रहते हैं, फलानी स्कीम के 100 लाभार्थी हैं, यानी हकदार हैं, तो मेरा होता है उन 100 को मिलना चाहिए। फिर इस जाति का उस जाति का नहीं। हाँ, हो सकता है किसी को सोमवार को मिलेगा, किसी को बुधवार को मिलेगा, किसी को जनवरी को मिलेगा, किसी को जुलाई में मिलेगा, लेकिन हकदार जितने हैं सबको मिलना चाहिए। तो गवर्नेंस में डिस्क्रिमिनेशन नहीं होना चाहिए, सेकुलरिज्म होना चाहिए।
Well-known author and analyst, Professor Anand Ranganathan now joins us. We have Tohin Sinha, spokesperson of the BJP. Rajat Sethi joins us. Sanjay Jha is with us. Rashid Kidwai is with us. And Siddharth Zarabi, the managing editor of Business Today Television. So I want to go to Anand Ranganathan first. Professor Ranganathan, if you had an opportunity to watch the Prime Minister's interview, of all the things that he said, what stood out to you as being the key highlight?
Good evening, Rahul, and good evening to my fellow panelists. First of all, congratulations to you and your colleagues for conducting a marvelous interview. I noticed some of your colleagues were absent, and so the Prime Minister could not be asked whether he likes pizza or pasta with his thepla. But in any case, I think the most important question that was asked, and I'm thankful that it was, and it was answered, and I'm thankful that it was answered by the Prime Minister, although I have to say this, that he was incorrect in that he says that he is secular and that he wishes India should remain secular. India is not secular. The state controls exclusively only Hindu places of worship. As long as that happens, and the mosques and the churches are not controlled by the state is interfering in religious matters of Hindus. So India is plural, not secular, be that as it may. This canard that has been spread repeatedly for the last 10 years, possibly more in fact, that Modi is anti-Muslim. Now, how do we dispel it? The Prime Minister dispelled it only partially, if I may say so, without being patronizing to him. Look, let us look at the condition of Muslims in a state that has never been ruled by the BJP, whose present and past chief ministers have gone out of their way to appease Muslims. Bengal. In Bengal, Muslims are poorer than any other community, with their population growing twice the rate of Hindus. According to the periodic labor force survey, only 13% Bengali Muslims have regular salaried jobs. Figure for India is 22.1%. 35% Bengali Muslims work as casual laborers. Figures for India is 24%. Muslims in Bengal earn 27 to 40% lower than Muslims in the rest of India. Muslims make up 30% of Bengal population, only 7% of all university and college teachers in Bengal are Muslims. And if you discount madrasas, then the figure is even more minuscule. Literacy rate for Muslims is 7% lower than the state average. This, after 40 to 45 years of non-BJP rules, after 40 years of rule by those who claim to work for them. Another example of discrimination is the Disturbed Areas Act, where a Muslim is forced to live in Muslim ghettos and not mix. And who brought this as a law? The Congress. But now, let us look at Muslims in BJP-ruled Gujarat. For the last 25 years, BJP has been ruling. The rural per capita income of Muslims is higher than Hindus. They occupy same percentage of higher government posts as their population share. This is from the Sachar report. Their literacy rate is 6% higher than the national average. Now, on the biggest accusation that Modi is anti-Muslim, well, here let me give you the hard data in 30 seconds. Minorities before 2014, 20,000 skilled trained, 5% with government jobs, 3 crore scholarships, 70% girls school dropout rate. Minorities after 2014, 2 million skilled trained, 10% with government jobs, 5 crore scholarships, free UPSC coaching, 30% girls school dropout rate. In fact, Modi has given scholarships to more Muslims than Manmohan Singh did. Has Modi reduced AMU funding? No. In fact, he has increased it, including a 90 crore topping up, while 36% beneficiaries under Mudra Yojana, 14.31.3% homes under Awas Yojana, 33% of funds under Kisan Samman Nidhi go to Muslims, who constitute only 14.2% of our population. Pradhan Mantri Shadi Shagun scheme, exclusively for Muslim girls who complete their graduation, they will get 51,000, housing, skilling, scholarships, government jobs. Rahul, no other Prime Minister has comparatively done more for Muslims than Modi has.
Okay, interesting there from Professor Ranganathan. Rajat Sethi, you've been involved in BJP campaigns, you're seeing this one. And what do you make of the Prime Minister's body language, the way he responds to questions, even when there is a tough question coming? He said, कोई question tough नहीं होता, ऐसे मुश्किल सवालों का जवाब दिया, मुश्किल सवाल होता ही नहीं है. What did you make and what stood out for you as being the key takeaway from this interview, from your POV?
Well, Rahul, I think if the intent is clear, questions are not difficult. You just need to present facts before your audience. But I think, just 2-3 phases are left and 70% of India has voted. Why is this interview still relevant? And I think what I could infer is that there are still a lot of international audiences who tends to still doubt India's depth of democracy, depth of our electoral process, understand India's true secular fabric, the way they want to paint everything to do with BJP and Modi as deeply communal in nature and all of that. I mean, even a small news gets painted that Modi's man Prajwal is involved in rape. Of course, I mean, he was in alliance, but he's not Modi's man as such. But this colored opinion that the Western audience has, I think part of Modi's intent in this interview was also to very simply explain to audience of all hues and colors outside India as well, that see,
okay, I want to go across to Siddharth Zarabi on the question that Sudhir asked about the perceived linkages to corporate houses and the charge of being pro-Ambani, Adani. Then there's a follow-up question on income inequality, the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, that India's growth and recovery is K-shaped. What came across to me, Siddharth, I'm keen to hear your perspective, is just how unapologetic the Prime Minister was. He didn't come under pressure. He wasn't concerned about getting branded as being corporates. He says, wealth creation and achievement should be celebrated the Nehru government was tagged as being a Tata Birla ki sarkar. That's why they're trying to do this to me.
Absolutely, and I think if you were to sort of read the fine print on some of the economic matters where the Prime Minister has commented to in response to all of your questions, there are two key things that stand out. One, very clearly that the Prime Minister is not at all diffident about the economic achievements of the government, especially on the issue of either job creation or income equality. That's a point that you had also raised. And the third thing, Rahul, that stood out for me was the manner in which he has highlighted an issue which has gained a lot of currency post an interview recently that we did with L&T, where L&T, which is built at very considerable cost and 90% ownership, Hyderabad Metro, is now saying that because of the scheme that was offered for women for free bus rides, there is a problem where the metro may not be viable. Look at the way the Prime Minister picked that issue up, and in that particular answer, according to me, Rahul, he brought out the issue on freebies, Revdi debate in a very, very cogent manner, which is that while you can give welfare to those who are deprived, you cannot bankrupt institutions or companies or agencies which are supposed to provide public services.
That's a very important point. In fact, I want to show excerpts of the questions because this business of being close to corporate houses is something that's flung at the Prime Minister often. So Sudhir asked him this question. Let's see what the Prime Minister had to say.
मैं लाल किले से बोलता हूं, इस देश में वेल्थ क्रिएटर्स की इज्जत होनी चाहिए। मेरे देश में जो सक्षम लोग हैं, जो सामर्थ्यवान लोग हैं, इनकी प्रतिष्ठा बढ़नी चाहिए। मैं मेरे 15 अगस्त के जो गेस्ट लिस्ट होता है, उसमें मैं खिलाड़ी जो अचीवर्स हैं उनको बिठाता हूं। अगर देश अचीवर्स की पूजा नहीं करेगा, देश अचीवर्स का महात्मा ही नहीं करेगा, तो मेरे देश में पीएचडी करने वाले लोग कहां से निकलेंगे, साइंटिस्ट कहां से निकलेंगे। जीवन के हर क्षेत्र में अचीवर्स की इज्जत होनी चाहिए भाई। अगर कल आज तक ग्लोबल चैनल बनता है तो मैं सबसे पहला हूं साहब ताली बजाऊंगा जी। मुझे मालूम है आज तक मेरे साथ क्या जुर्म करता है, लेकिन मैं उसकी ताली बजाऊंगा क्योंकि मेरे देश की आज तक ग्लोबल हुआ। मुझे तो दुख है जी कि CNN, BBC आजादी के 75 साल हुए, मेरी एक ग्लोबल चैनल अल जजीरा रातों रात आए और ग्लोबल चैनल बन जाए। अब कोई कहेगा तुम तो अरुण पुरी बड़े धनपति की मदद कर रहे हो। मैं धनपति की मदद नहीं कर रहा हूं। मेरे देश का गर्व है। मेरे देश की मल्टीनेशनल कंपनियां क्यों नहीं होनी चाहिए भाई? दुनिया में मेरे देश की कंपनियों की दुकानें क्यों नहीं होनी चाहिए? दुनिया के लोग नौकर रोजगार के लिए मेरे देश के शर्माते क्या हो भाई? हाँ, बेईमानी की है तो फांसी पर लटका दो, गलत तरीके से दिया है तो फांसी पर लटका दो, लेकिन मैं मेरे देश में वेल्थ क्रिएटर की इज्जत करूंगा। मेरे देश के उज्जवल भविष्य के लिए जितना मैं पूज्य भाव से मेरे श्रमिक के पसीने की चिंता करता हूं, उतने ही भाज्य भाव से मैं पूंजीपति के पैसों का भी महत्व समझता हूं।
ये बहुत बड़ी बात है।
मेरे लिए पूंजीपति का पैसा हो, मैनेजमेंट करने वालों का दिमाग हो, परिश्रम करने वाले का पसीना हो, ये तीनों को एक परिवार के रूप में मैं देखता हूं, तब जाकर के विकास होता है।
That is quite remarkable. You know, that's probably the most unabashed support of the effort made by corporate India that we've heard from any leader in office, because the effort constantly is to put the Prime Minister on the defensive on this issue, and which is why it was a bit of a tricky question when it came, but in the manner he comes out and justifies wealth creation, the contribution to the economy, job creation, the fact that that's how growth happens. It basically shows that this is not something that he wants to go on the back foot on. He's willing to take that question, and he also says, "Baimani ki to khair nahi."
फांसी पर लटका दूंगा.
Well, good evening, Rahul. Good evening, everybody. You know, first of all, let me congratulate you and your colleagues for what is one of the most candid and one of the most comprehensive interviews that the Honorable Prime Minister has given.
ऐसा तो नहीं कि जहां जाते हो यही बोलते हो. You're saying this because you mean it, right?
Sorry?
I'm saying ऐसा तो नहीं कि दूसरे चैनल पे गए उनको भी सेम सुना के आ गए. You're saying it because you mean it, right?
नहीं, आपकी आवाज थोड़ी सी एको हो रही है. Let me just carry on. You know, this is not the first time Honorable Prime Minister has said this. In fact, he has said it in the past that the government can be both pro-poor and pro-business at the same time. You know, and this is a nuanced approach which unfortunately the Maoist Congress would not understand. That is a big difference between Modi ji's BJP and the present Congress party. But what is equally important, and I think, you know, this should, you know, get settled from here, when you pointedly asked, or when one of your colleagues pointedly asked Honorable Prime Minister, why does he not take press conferences? You know, if you just go by the number of interviews the Honorable Prime Minister has given in the last 1 month, the count would be somewhere between 45 to 50 as of today, if you include the print interview, and most of them are exhaustive interviews with 20 plus questions. I think this is far more tougher, this is far more challenging, but yes, the conversational style, the heart-to-heart conversations make it that much easy for it to be articulated. You know, I think these are far better than controlled press conferences. I think these must be appreciated. I don't think any opposition leader today has the patience or has the intellectual ability to, you know, go through these 45, 50 different interviews. And he you know, completely, he covered almost every issue, be it Kashmir, be it when you pointedly asked him, why do you do Hindu-Muslim? He had a very nuanced answer. Yes, we need to expose the out-and-out pro-Muslim approach of the Congress party, which is what he's asking. I'm asking you a simple question. Are the you know, infrastructure projects in this country in future going to be awarded on the basis
Let's hear what Rashid Kidwai has to say. Rashid Saab, you heard the interview. Kya acha laga, kya bura laga? What do you make of it?
I think, Rahul, full marks to you and my friend Sudhir and others who...
Arey wah, Rashid Saab se bhi marks mil gaye?
No. But this is the best of election.
It means a lot.
No, but there's a but now.
His political formulations. The good part or the bad part, Rahul, it's about India is that whatever you say, the opposite is equally true. This is for politicians to respond. Therefore, I will not react to kind of, you know, that kind of factual part, debatable point that he made in the interview. But I think in election time, it was a very sound, comprehensive interview, question asked. And I said his responses were largely extremely political and aimed at election. So Modi, the campaigner, was there. Modi, as Prime Minister, was somewhat missing.
Sure, but that's only natural. He's in the middle of a hectic campaign, and naturally his main interest right now is to secure his government for the next 5 years, and then he does whatever governance he needs to.
We must also not ignore the fact that, you know, despite of all the questions, especially this Adani Ambani question, one, he was not at all on the back foot. At all. He was super confident. He knew what he has to say. He was very confident. He knew absolutely what to say and what to do in this matter.
Let's hear from Sanjay Jha. Sanjay bhai, what did you make of the interview? Rashid Saab seems it was okay. Are you concurring, or do you want to play the lone man standing apart?
Rahul, I intend to puncture this very self-congratulatory congregation. Mr. Modi can do what he likes. Bottom line that nobody can ever ignore. He has the dubious distinction of being the first Prime Minister of any democracy. In his case, 10 years. And he did not have the courage to do a single press conference. I've been to several TV channels after his interviews. They have all claimed it is the greatest interview he has ever given. I'm not trying to comment on yours, but most people have sniggered that these have been very choreographed and organized setups. But let me just kind of rebut.
Can I just pause you for a moment to say, Sanjay, you complete what you're saying, but since you said that,
can I finish what
can I just complete, just to tell you and to everyone who's watching.
You don't have to get defensive.
No, I'm not getting defensive at all. You are free to say whatever you want. We'll hear what you have to say. I'm just saying that 1 in 4 questions, almost 1 in 3 questions were completely spontaneous. You know, it's not, there's a conversation. So a lot of what was actually there was stuff we discussed amongst ourselves, what questions we want to ask, but a lot of this is coming out of his question, out of his answers. So it's not as if it's been thought out and written out.
And Rahul, I'll give 2 examples. There was a press conference by Arvind Kejriwal and Akhilesh Yadav today in Lucknow, and the reporters constantly asked both of them about Swati Maliwal. None of them responded. None of them did the acknowledged, and they gave very vague answers. Means way off.
Okay. So let's
so this is Are we talking about such press conferences? If you go to Rahul Gandhi's press conference, if you ask a follow-up question, he will immediately brand you as a BJP spokesperson, or he will say it's a BJP question, and he'll not. He'll just.
No, I can tell you on first authority, because we
so
discussed the questions. We had a structure.
What's the
but
point of
so
having
much
such
of it
press
came
conferences?
organically out of the conversation. Yeah. It's not as if he knows what's coming. It's not as if it's written out. They just came out of the conversation, and you can see the level of spontaneity in the interview itself. But that said, Sanjay, feel free to make your point. Go on.
Rahul, it's interesting that I spoke for 30 seconds and I got a 3-minute rebuttal from you and Mr. Chaudhary. But let me finish. I won't take too long. You know, one of the gentlemen, Mr. Sethi, said about Prajwal Rewana, he's not one of our men. Surely Brij Bhushan Singh is, right? And we have seen how Brij Bhushan Singh was protected by the BJP when the women champion wrestlers of our country were begging for justice on a sexual harassment case. And today we find that the son of Brij Bhushan Singh is a candidate for the BJP. So much for Parivarwad. You know, you asked him a question on democracy. And it is funny that Mr. Modi talked about Gandhi Parivar. I mean, does he know what the Supreme Court of India had to say when the Chandigarh election fraud was caught on camera? The Supreme Court said this is a mockery of our democracy and this is a murder of our democracy. May I remind Mr. Modi through your channel, because I do hope somebody will tell him that there was a conversation after his grand performance, that end of day, there is something called as a grand washing machine of India. That when he said what institutions, he is made a mockery of the CBI, the ED and the income tax and the NIA. And anybody who destroys institutions is destroying India's democracy. Can he run away from that? Can he answer the point that Manipur, where, by the way, over, I don't know what the last data is, but thousands and tens of thousands are homeless. There are over 200 dead.
No, but
and it's been a year, Mr. Modi hasn't even gone to Manipur. And we're talking about democratic credentials of the Prime Minister.
You know, the democratic credentials are on test. The voters will decide. Anand Ranganathan has his hand up. He wants to come in and respond, because it's not just Sanjay Jha says the questions. They're saying, look at the actions. The actions speak for himself. He's not being taken in by Modi ji's replies. Anand.
2 points very quickly. I think he hit the nail on the head when he talked about that others talked about press conferences and how the opposition leaders are always giving. They're fearless. They're giving. He talked about the press conference today, and it is shocking on the day when you can see the ticker below our debate, Rahul. As Ms. Maliwal has accused of being viciously assaulted by a close aide of Kejriwal on the chest, on the lower body, slapped on the face 6 times. This happened while Kejriwal was in the house, a few feet away, and stunned silence by Rahul Gandhi, by Akhilesh Yadav, who says this is not a big issue. Kapil Sibal says it's an internal matter. This is how they treat women's safety. And these are the people who are accusing others. So Sudhir is right. But on a lighter note, if I may, because you are almost itching for contrarian or shall I say criticism, Rahul, which is so like you and which is why you are light. I'm afraid on 3 issues, the Prime Minister was not cornered. He could have been totally cornered on the 3 following issues. On 1, and I'll tell you the reason why he's not cornered by even the opposition is because the opposition supports him in this. Sanjay would support him in this. On 1, when in 2013 the Prime Minister said the government has no business to be in business. While in the last 10 years, all what this government has done is to be in the business of running businesses and public sector units. But the opposition supports him. Opposition doesn't want privatization. So there the Prime Minister would have been cornered. On the freebie issue, the Prime Minister would have been cornered because he himself has not defined what exactly is welfare and what is freebie. There are many examples where the BJP also indulges in freebies. For example, on free pilgrimages that it gives to senior citizens. I think that is a freebie, that is not welfareism. And on the 3rd issue on corruption, the Prime Minister was not cornered because you should have asked the Prime Minister, what does he actually mean whenever he accuses someone of being corrupt? And the next day that person is joining the BJP, who in his mind is corrupt from now on, when specially, and again I'm at pains to point out that the opposition will not corner Narendra Modi, because when the High Court convicted the BJP of violating the FCRA guidelines and conviction carried a 5-year prison sentence, and the BJP amended the FCRA Act, rendering the High Court conviction toothless. It was the Congress that supported the BJP. The Congress was also convicted by the High Court. So the Congress, in collusion with the BJP, acted corruptly and they amended the FCRA Act, thereby escaping conviction from the High Court.
Okay.
So these are the three issues on
Let
corruption.
Toheen Sinha respond to the points that you've made on the issue of corruption. Just saying that I want that action be taken is not enough. There are so many who were alleged to be corrupt when they were in the opposition and now they've joined the BJP. And while Anjana did ask that question, Professor Ranganathan makes the point, but once they're in the BJP, nothing happens.
Well, Rahul, in politics, one makes allegations, but if those allegations don't get proved for over 10 years, and mind you, these money laundering cases are not easy to prove. There are 5,000 of them. It's not as if people have been let off selectively. There are over 5,000 cases, and that includes people from all political parties, which have not gone anywhere for want of evidence. So do we ban those people? But having said that, if our leaders don't get caught, it is only because Modi ji has set a different work culture, which the BJP subscribes to. I am challenging the opposition state governments. In Karnataka,
I think you missed the point that Professor Ranganathan made. He said these are acts of corruption that have already been committed, which need to be investigated and then prosecuted, which the agencies don't seem to do once they join the BJP. That's the point he was making.
No, allow me to complete, please. In opposition state governments, if in Karnataka, where they won the election last year just by calling us for 40% Sarkara, they have the Anti-Corruption Bureau, which is under the control of the state government. Why don't they go after our ex-ministers? In Bengal, if Mamata Banerjee has all kinds of charges against Subhendu Adhikari, why does she not initiate a state government inquiry and why does she not go after him? So I think, the opposition has a lot to answer.
Okay. So it's interesting that you're saying what you are, and Anand Ranganathan has his hand up. He's itching to go and respond to what you're saying. And I'm kind of wondering which side of the divide you're on this evening. Go on, sir.
Anand should also have interviewed the Prime Minister. The next time you should take Anand also, because he has some very interesting questions. Next time he could pose it to the Prime Minister.
Chaliye, aap bhi chaliye, Professor Saab.
I'm only called to any place only once, Rahul. So it'll be a miracle if you call me again. No, but Toheen is a very dear friend. Nonetheless, I have to tell him this. You see, a few years ago, the BJP did a dharna outside Vidhan Sauda demanding the arrest of, unfortunately, my namesake, Anand Singh, who was a Congress MLA. They said this guy has 15 forest crime charges against him. He must be arrested. And those were pretty serious forest crime charges like sandalwood smuggling and poaching, etc. What did Anand Singh do? He joined the BJP. And what did BJP do? BJP made him the forest minister. Now, if the Prime Minister was asked this, Prime Minister, how is this tackling corruption? The guy you were accusing and saying that should be behind bars is now your minister, who was accused of forest crime charges, now the forest minister. Please explain this.
Okay, Sanjay Jha is going to say, if Anand Ranganathan says all this, what am I supposed to say? But before Sanjay comes back on, I want to show you what the Prime Minister said on Kashmir. And, this very important assertion he makes that of all the things that have happened during this election, what gives him the greatest heart and greatest joy is the fact that in Kashmir we're seeing higher voter participation than we've seen in the last several decades. Here's Prime Minister Modi on Naya Kashmir.
इस पूरे चुनाव में मेरे लिए संतोष की पल कौन सी? तो मेरे लिए संतोष की पल है श्रीनगर का वोटिंग, क्योंकि इसने इस बात को थप्पा मार दिया कि मेरी नीतियां सही है, मैं कोई डिस्क्रिमिनेशन नहीं करता हूं, मेरी सरकार धर्म के आधार पर भेदभाव नहीं करती है, जहां तक राज्य का दर्जा का हमने पार्लियामेंट में प्रॉमिस किया हुआ है और हम उस पर कमिटेड है। हाँ, हम सफल होना चाहते हैं, सफल इन द सेंस पॉलिटिकल पावर में नहीं, स्थितियों में। और पहले हम पर क्या गालियां पड़ती थी, आपने इंटरनेट बंद कर दिया, चारों तरफ होल्ला मीडिया में, हम जाते थे मीटिंग में तो आप लोग मिलते थे तो इंटरनेट बंद कर दिया, कौन सा लोकतंत्र है। गालियां खाई, लेकिन मेरे कश्मीर का भला मैंने किया है। मैं दूर का देख सकता था, आप 24 घंटे चैनल के लिए देखते थे, मैं देश के लिए देखता था, और इसलिए मैं इंटरनेट की गालियां खाने के बाद भी इंटरनेट बंद कर करके भी मैं नौजवानों को गलत रास्ते से बचाने में सफल हुआ। दूसरा मेरा संतोष है, अब 10 साल का समय लगा लीजिए, मानो 2004 से 2014 कितनी माताओं ने अपने बच्चे खोए होंगे, 2014 से 24 कितनी माताओं के लाल बच गए। जीवन में इससे बड़ा संतोष क्या होता है जी। और इसलिए राज्य भी हमारा अपना कमिटमेंट है, प्रक्रिया हम सफलता के लिए जो भी रास्ता होगा वो करेंगे।
Making the point that it doesn't matter who they are voting for as long as people are coming out and voting. That is what matters most. Rajat Sethi, he's trying to rise above the din of everyday politics, saying now he's aiming for the future, aiming for history, looking at his legacy, wanting to cement that, and he says it doesn't matter who they're voting for as long as people in Kashmir are coming out and voting, and that gives him the greatest joy of all the things that have happened in this campaign.
So, among all the achievements that Modi 2.0 had brought in, I think something that Prime Minister Modi would be really proud of is internal security that he has ensured for every Indian, and more so specifically when it comes to Kashmir. Especially looking at the incidents that have drastically reduced. There are still some stray events which keep happening, but more or less you see that that part of our country which has been ailing for far too long has finally, it seems, decided to march forward. They have decided that they'll join hands with the rest of Indians and not look back. How do you continue cementing this positive sentiment over the next 4 or 5 years so that Kashmir permanently comes out of that logjam? That is going to be Prime Minister's lasting, one of the biggest contributions, I suppose, over and above everything else that he has done. That and internal securities. I mean, we have seen that every now and then. In fact, when he started his 2014 campaign, he started it from Gaya when we saw bomb blast right in his political meeting. We cannot forget those days. And there used to be so many incidents in every single prominent metropolitan city of our country, terror attacks, bomb attacks, all of that. Those have majorly come down. So I think what he has done, he has allowed enough freedom into the hands of our intelligence apparatus, brought it under the command center of Ajit Doval, and ensured that they have the right support and the political backing to ensure that when it comes to any part of our country, whatever needs to be done, needs to be done. He cracked upon terror financing. I think that is, again, a very less and underappreciated fact, that financing was the linchpin of why we were seeing so much of violence in our country, so much of internal violence, and more so in Kashmir and the valley area.
Okay.
But over time, we have seen that aspect also, the backbone has been destroyed, and it is something which is worth looking at from a case study standpoint. Somebody should look at as to how did he go about it. There are a lot of interesting anecdotes which I'm sure you'd be privy of, how he has brought down the international finance edifice in Kashmir, which has resulted in what we are seeing today.
I want to spend a moment on the Prime Minister's response on the Uniform Civil Code, that this could lead to a uniform dress code, a uniform language code, a uniform food code, and even one nation, one leader. So he responds to this, Rashid ki advice, saying that, see what happened in Goa. We have a UCC, but there's no uniform food or dress code. He's trying to allay apprehensions around the implementation of UCC. Do you think this goes some distance in trying to convince those who are still not convinced about the utility of UCC, or do you think it will just have to be done like Article 370 was, regardless of the immediate response, in the hope that ultimately everyone will realize that this was for their good?
Yeah, so once again, Rahul, this is a political formulation. The government is not very serious about, implementing UCC the way UCC should be. There are a lot of misgivings about whether it is uniform civil code or it is going to be something that are many communities and many people are kept out of this ambit, the way we have seen in Uttarakhand. And a lot of it is seen as if it is aimed at, punishing or otherizing certain community or communities. So there has to be consensus building. But overall, I'm not finding faults. What I'm saying is, if we go on finding, the factual errors or the counter narrative, I think we can go on having whole light kind of conversation. The Prime Minister has spoken politically to defend his position. It's for people to decide.
Ultimately, it comes down to that. Sanjay Jha, you can be unhappy with the questions, you can be unhappy with the answers. Ultimately, it's about whether the Indian voter is satisfied or not, and that's the beauty of democracy. What Sanjay Jha thinks means little. What the Indian voter thinks is what we must all respect, and that we'll know on the 4th of June.
Rahul, let me tell you, absolutely. Eventually, it's a public verdict. But since I seem to be the only one on the panel who seems to have a contrarian view, let me point out, you mentioned
that
Kashmir.
Wasn't the original plan. That wasn't the original plan. The plan originally was far more balanced. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Everyone's reacting, and this is the elections. Everyone's entitled to change their mind. So go on, Sanjay.
Absolutely. No, so that's
I just hope that the opposition doesn't end up being just one person in all that big number, right? That will be a bit of a problem.
I'll borrow from Modi ji himself, ek banda sab pe bhari. But let me answer you very quickly that when you mentioned Kashmir, the truth is this, that the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Why is the BJP not contesting elections in Kashmir Valley? I mean, that's a question that Mr. Modi needs to explain to the people of this country. If over the last 5 years, the entire Kashmir strategy has been popularly accepted. That's a bottom line.
But I think you missed the point, Sanjay. He's trying to rise above that. He's not even trying to say that the BJP is extremely popular in Kashmir. He's not making that point. He says, boss, people are coming out and voting, and that is what we must celebrate. He's trying to make the point. Doesn't matter who they're voting for, as long as they're coming out and voting. That's the point you seem to be missing, Sanjay.
Anyway, Rahul, I want to make a second point, and that is important as far as I'm concerned. When the Prime Minister of a country makes a statement in a speech where he says that the leading opposition party, the Congress, is going to make reservations in the Indian cricket team for minorities/Muslims, I think we need to get worried as a country. Cricket is, I think, the most secular adventure or the expedition all of us indulge in. To bring communalism there, I thought was a message that now the polarization is becoming very retail. And I want to put it on record. Mr. Modi wins or loses. I hope it's the latter. But Mr. Modi is the most polarizing leader we have seen since independence. Okay. And I think, that fact cannot be denied. Also, electoral bonds, in my opinion, a manifestation of criminality, corruption, and crony capitalism. This government has a lot to explain to the people of this country.
Okay, I'm out of time. Anand Ranganathan has his hand up. So one very quick final response and then we wrap up. Go on, Professor.
Yes, if electoral bonds were a manifestation of criminality, then the Congress should be behind bars for accepting 1,600 crores through the same electoral bonds. Number two, it is a fact that you don't punish a community, with due respect to one of the panelists, you don't punish a community by bringing a uniform civil code that bars child marriages. I mean, I'm astonished. You celebrate a community when you bar child marriages.
Sure. As I said, the idea is not to set up a congregation for self-congratulation. That's not the idea. Sudhir, Anjana, Shweta and I, we did what we could. We asked the questions that we thought needed to be asked. The Prime Minister responded to all of them. Now, what you make of the questions, what you make of the answers, ultimately, it's in the viewer's court. Like a neta is in the voter's court, we are in the viewer's court. So whether you're watching on TV, digital or social, you decide what you
Rahul,
think.
Let's hope we get the same kind of interviews from Rahul Gandhi, Sonia Gandhi and Priyanka.
We've been trying very hard, as you know.
Absolutely.
And so far they haven't spoken. But despite that, we'll keep trying. We don't give up. We tried very hard to make this interview with the Prime Minister happen. Finally came together. We will try as hard to make interviews with Rahul Gandhi, Akhilesh, Tejasvi and everybody else in the opposition, as you've been seeing on our network. It's not about picking a side. It's not about speaking to one person. It's about wanting to hear all sides and all shades of opinion. That's the beauty of India's democracy, and that's why we are India's first and only democratic newsroom. To my guests for joining me, thank you very much. We hope that we have the viewers' vote. The good thing was, the IPL match got washed out today because of the rain. So many more people who otherwise may have been watching the match were hopefully spending their time watching India Today and Aajtak this evening. So we'll see what happens. But thank you for tuning in, and do watch snatches of the interview and keep sharing your feedback, good, bad, ugly. That really keeps us going.